Have you ever walked out of the grocery store feeling like you have spent way more than you planned? You're not alone. Lately, it seems like every trip to the store gets way more expensive, right? Whether it's milk, bread, or even just some veggies, those prices are climbing faster than we would like. In fact, global food prices in 2024 are higher than they have been in over a decade. The Food and Agriculture Organization says food prices are up almost 10% this year alone. And it's not just the usual suspects. Countries like Argentina are dealing with inflation rates over 100%. Can you believe it? Imagine your grocery bill doubling in a year. Even here in the US, it feels like every trip to the supermarket is costing more. Eggs, dairy, fresh produce, all up. And Europe isn't any different either, especially with energy costs still sky high. What's going on, right? Now, you might be thinking, okay, but we have had inflation before. Why is it so bad this time? Well, here's the thing. This time, it's like the universe decided to throw everything at us all at once. It's a perfect storm of supply chain headaches, geopolitical conflict, and climate chaos, and it's hitting everyone. Whether you're in the US, Europe, or anywhere else, no one is getting off easy. In today's video, we are going to explore how serious this issue is. We'll look at how global inflation is driving up the cost of food and how it's pushing millions of people into food insecurity and what's being done to combat this growing crisis. Let's unravel this thread. 2024 has been a rough year for food prices across the globe. Whether you're buying rice in India, wheat in the US, or cooking oil in Europe, you're probably feeling that pinch. According to FAO, the global food prices are up 10% this year, but some regions are getting hit even harder. For example, in sub-Saharan Africa, food prices have jumped nearly 20% because of climate shocks and trade disruptions. Staple foods like wheat, rice, and vegetable oil are the biggest culprits. Wheat prices alone have spiked 17% this year compared to 2023. And that's especially tough for families in developing countries where up to 60% of household income goes straight to food. So why are food prices skyrocketing? Well, there are a few major reasons. First up, supply chain issues. Yeah, we are still dealing with the aftermath of COVID-19. The pandemic didn't just shut down cities, it disrupted the entire flow of goods around the world. Shipping slowed down, labor shortages hit hard, and getting food from farms to tables became a lot more expensive. And then we've got Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine happens to be one of the world's top exporters of wheat and sunflower oil. But the war has thrown those supplies into chaos. Farmlands have been destroyed, and blockades in Black Sea have made it pretty hard for Ukraine to get what's left out to the rest of the world. Before the war, Ukraine supplied about 10% of world's wheat. Now, countries that relied on Ukrainian wheat, like Egypt and Bangladesh, are paying a lot more to get it from other places. Have you noticed that your favorite products are harder to find or more expensive? What's been the biggest change for you? Let me know in the comments. Finally, we have climate change, which is making everything worse. Extreme weather events like floods, droughts, and heat waves are hitting major food-producing regions hard. Take US for example. Droughts in the Midwest have slashed crop yields for things like corn and soybeans. And it's not just the US. India, one of the biggest rice producers in the world, has had a pretty rough year too, with both droughts and floods in 2024 lowering its rice output significantly. When a major producer like India has a bad year, it sends ripples across the globe and rice prices skyrocket worldwide. The FAO even predicts that climate disruptions will keep messing with food production for years to come, which means food prices may continue climbing. That's why in 2024, we are seeing more families fall into food insecurity, with many now struggling to afford even basic meals. This isn't just some short-term hiccup either. It's a part of a larger global trend that's leaving millions of people wondering where their next meal will come from. So, what are families doing about this? Well, they are adapting. Many are buying in bulk, and others are cutting back on fresh produce and meat or relying more on food banks and discount grocery stores to get by. And it's not just a few people. Food banks have seen a huge surge in demand. Are you seeing similar price hikes where you live? How are you adapting? Share your tips in the comments. The Feeding America Network reports that requests for food assistance have gone up by about 30% compared to last year. Even middle-class families who maybe didn't need help before are turning up to these programs because they just can't keep up with rising costs. That's how much of a difference these price hikes are making. It's not just the individuals feeling the pain. Small businesses, especially restaurants, are getting hit with higher costs for ingredients. And guess what? That's being passed on to customers. So that burger you love, yeah, it's probably a couple bucks more expensive now. Dining out has officially joined the luxury category. Now, if you think things are bad here, take a moment to look at other parts of the world. In developing countries, rising food prices are more than just a frustration. They are a crisis. In these places, people spend a much larger portion of their income on food. So when prices jump, it's not about cutting out luxuries. It's about choosing between eating or going hungry. We have seen images of food shortages and protests in countries like Sri Lanka and Lebanon, where rising prices led to street demonstrations. It's a visual reminder that when food becomes unaffordable, people take to the streets. Meanwhile, in Latin America, we've got countries like Argentina battling hyperinflation. Food prices there have doubled in a year. Families are being forced to buy less, cut down on meals, or rely on food aid programs just to survive. It makes you think, if something as basic as putting food on the table is challenging for so many, how close are we to experiencing the same struggles at home? In the US, rising prices means cutting back on luxuries. In developing countries, it's the difference between eating or not. And sadly, there's only so much that can be done. Organizations like the World Food Program and UNICEF are stepping in to provide emergency food aid. But with global inflation continuing to rise, millions of people are facing the harsh reality. Food that was once affordable is now out of reach. For some, the future looks uncertain. But hopefully, with international efforts and some luck on the weather front, we can turn things around before more people go hungry. Food insecurity. It's one of those terms we hear a lot. But for millions of people in 2024, it's becoming an all too real daily struggle. And it's not just about skipping a meal here or there. No, it's the constant worry of, will I have enough food tomorrow, next week, next month? Right now, more than 900 million people around the world are food insecure according to World Food Program. Access to food is one thing, but access to nutritious food, that's a whole different ballgame. A lot of people in food insecure households end up relying on cheap, calorie-dense foods that are filling but lack all those important vitamins and nutrients. When you consider that millions are going without daily essentials, it's not just a distant problem. It's one we are all tied to through the food system. What if that system breaks down further? For kids, food insecurity can be absolutely devastating. Malnutrition, basically not getting the nutrients you need, affects growth and development in ways that can last a lifetime. According to UNICEF, stunted growth due to malnutrition affects around 149 million children worldwide. Think about that, 149 million kids who are shorter than their peers and more likely to deal with long-term health issues like weakened immune systems and cognitive delays. And it doesn't stop at physical growth. Malnutrition makes it tough for kids to concentrate in school. I mean, could you focus on math when all you can think about is your next meal? The ripple effects of food insecurity don't stop at hunger. When families are forced to cut back on food, it creates a cycle of poverty that's incredibly hard to escape. Adults who don't get enough to eat might struggle at work, which hurts their income. And parents often skip meals so their kids can eat, which, while noble, puts their own health on the line. It's a lose-lose situation. Food insecurity doesn't just affect individuals, it impacts entire communities. From mental health struggles like anxiety and depression to protests and conflicts over food shortages, the strain is real. When food becomes unaffordable, tensions rise, reminding us that food insecurity is not just a personal problem, it's a national and global issue. To really fix food insecurity, we need to address the root causes, things like poverty, inflation, and climate change. And we need to improve food systems so that people can access affordable, nutritious food in a sustainable way. It's not just about feeding people today. It's about making sure we can keep feeding people tomorrow, next week, and next year. First, let's talk about how governments are responding. Many governments are responding with food subsidies and price controls. In India, for example, the public distribution system helps over 800 million people by keeping basic grains affordable. These efforts are helping, but the cost of subsidies and aid programs isn't sustainable long term. Global organizations like the IMF and World Bank are pushing for international cooperation to address food insecurity at its root before the crisis worsens. As we look to the future, the big question is, will food prices ever go down, or is this just the new normal? Unfortunately, experts predict that food prices are likely to remain high for the foreseeable future due to several factors. Climate-related disruption and population growth will keep pushing food prices higher, even if we fix supply chain and energy issues. With extreme weather and growing global population, agriculture production is becoming less predictable, and the pressure on food systems will only increase. Energy prices also play a huge role. Since farming and shipping depend on fossil fuels, rising fuel costs make food production more expensive. With oil prices unstable, this could keep pushing food prices up. So, what can we do to make food systems more resilient? Luckily, there are some promising solutions on the table. First up, sustainable farming. Farmers are adopting climate-resilient crops and modern techniques like precision agriculture to adapt to extreme conditions. These innovative methods give farmers a better chance at combating challenges posed by climate change. Another important strategy is reducing our reliance on global supply chains. We all saw how easily they can break down during the pandemic, causing shortages and price spikes. By investing in local food production like urban farms and community gardens, countries can reduce their dependence on imports and help stabilize food prices. Plus, there's also something pretty cool about picking your own tomatoes instead of waiting for them to be shipped halfway around the world. So as we have seen throughout this video, the rising cost of food and the growing issue of food insecurity aren't just headlines. They are challenges affecting all of us, whether you're in the US or in a country thousands of miles away. It's not just about price tags on your grocery store shelves. It's about how global crises like climate change, war, and economic instability are making it harder for families everywhere to afford basic food they need to survive. But it's not all bad news. The future doesn't have to be this sad picture of overpriced groceries and empty plates. Around the world, governments, organizations, even everyday people like us are stepping up to tackle these problems. From investing in sustainable farming to providing emergency food aid and working toward climate solutions, there are real steps being taken to build more resilient food systems for the future. And here's where we come in. Every one of us has a role to play in this. It's not just about big government policies or world organizations. It's about little things we can do right in our own lives. We can all make a difference by reducing food waste, supporting local farmers, and donating to food aid organizations. Every small actions help build a more sustainable future. And don't forget, your voice matters. The time to act is now. Personally, I've started cutting down on food waste by meal planning and supporting local farmers. It's a small step. But imagine if we all did the same. If we don't start making these changes today, the problem will only get worse for all of us. Now look, we may not be able to solve the global food crisis overnight, but every small step we take, from reducing food waste to supporting local farmers, helps build a future where no one goes hungry. If this video resonated with you, share it and subscribe to stay updated on how we can tackle these global challenges together. Let's turn that shock at the grocery store into action. Every small step counts. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe.